Booyah! Coming at you live from a bunker down in Cambodia with a lot less hair today and a lot more brass. Okay? Big shout out to my wife who took the clippers to give me the typical quarantine cut. And my head feels like it's 10 pounds lighter between ditching the beard for Easter, because if you don't know, I traditionally give up shaving for Lent, and giving up and losing a little bit of the golden locks on top. My head feels a lot lighter today. But just because we're short on hair doesn't mean we're short on brass. And today we're picking up an instrument that's quite a bit bigger than anything we've picked up so far in the brass family. In fact, just like all brass instruments, this instrument here is just a big chunk of pipe with cheater valves on it. But the thing about it is that it's actually twice as long. If we were to unroll a trumpet and then unroll this instrument would actually be twice as long, and it plays exactly an octave lower. This is what we typically would call a baritone. Sometimes for all those band snobs out there, we would call this a euphonium. The euphonium just sounds such a highbrow word, and it actually is kind of a highbrow word. The word euphonium means good sound in Greek. But baritone, you might recognize that as kind of like a voicing thing, like the sound of a developing male voice, something that's not quite a bass, but something along those lines. Before we dig too much into this, I do want to go through a really quick science lesson. All brass instruments, remember, are conical and cylindrical, but there is something that all brass instruments also operate on, is a concept of pressure, how much pressure the air is producing as it spins through the pipes, and output of air. And those two things work in opposition to each other. Think about this. If I pinch my lips really close together, like this, I could blow that stream of air forever. And that is because the pressure is super, super high, but the amount of air coming out of my mouth is low. So high pressure equals low output. And as our brass instruments get bigger, the bore size, that's actually the size of the lead pipe, how wide it is, gets wider. So the bigger the instrument, the wider the bore size on the lead pipe. And what happens when that bore size gets wider is that output goes up and pressure goes down. Actually, I kind of have that backwards. Because the pressure goes down, more air can fit into the pipe all at once. Think about like PSI, or even our fan favorite structure over here, the Oahe Dam. If they have a lot of water flowing out of one spot all at once, it takes pressure off the rest of the dam. So as pressure goes down through that pipe, the amount of air we can push through it is going to go up, right? I have a really cool science lesson. Mrs. Carr kind of inspired me with this. So we have a balloon here, right? And really the only spot that the air is going to escape from is the top here. Well, if I put this balloon, if I put that top under a lot of pressure, we have that fun sound that everybody loves, right? Well, if I let go of that pressure, all of a sudden the balloon deflates really, really, really fast. And that is because the output of air goes through the roof if there's no pressure being held on in the spot where air is escaping. So let's try that again. One more time. Lots of pressure. But you don't see that balloon shrinking very fast at all. As soon as I let that pressure go, output of air goes right up the air, right? Goes right up out of the balloon. So, back to the baritone, you can see has the standard bowl-shaped mouthpiece that you would find like on a trumpet. It's just bigger, right? A lot bigger. I didn't pull my trumpet mouthpiece out. I don't know where I stuck the trumpet. It's somewhere. But quite a bit bigger. The shank is a little bit smaller, but that has to do with the lead pipe on the baritone more than anything. We've got that standard bowl shape. You can see right there's the rim, and inside is the cup, and that spot right here where you're going to feel the bite. Now, because the mouthpiece is a little bit bigger, that means it's going to take up a bigger area of our lips. The trumpet fits right there, and just on the Cupid's bow front of the lips. This one's going to spread out a little bit more, and you can see takes up quite a bit more of my lip space, and because of that, we need more of our lips to vibrate, and that vibration is going to be a little bit lower. It's going to be harder. We're not going to feel as much pinch on the bite of our lips. So for those playing at home, this is your opportunity to run to the bathroom or run to your bedroom or pull out that pocket mirror, and let's go ahead and revisit what it's like to blow into a brass mouthpiece. We want to get our lips nice and moist. You can see I'm doing it just subconsciously in preparation for putting that mouthpiece up to my face. Push down together, and maybe not hold it quite as tight as we did with the trumpet mouthpiece, but just a little bit more relaxed and just let that air go. And even if you could just relax the corners and let that buzz devolve down into that hoarse shake, right? And that's really going to help. Now you might ask yourself, why do brass players do that? And it's actually the exact same thing that athletes do when they warm up. It's all about blood flow, right? Usain Bolt goes through an incredibly intense stretching and warm-up regimen before he steps up to the line to sprint the 100 meters. And the reason why he does that is because if he just went up to those starting blocks and took off at dead cold, he's going to shred a hamstring, right? So we do the same thing with our lips. Our lips are made of muscle, right? The French have a special word for that muscle. It's called your embouchure. And that muscle, just like any other muscle in your body, needs to get warmed up, right? And so we do that by getting a little bit of shake. And the vibration forces blood flow. It activates right up here in the brain. They think, oh, that muscle is starting to be used, so we're going to send blood to that spot. So you'll feel a little bit of a tingling sensation start to filter into your lips, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be. That is just the blood flow kicking up into your lips so that your muscles of your embouchure can do what they're supposed to do even better, right? So, which is to pull and to relax the corners of your lips to allow the pitch to go up and down. Now, how does that relate to pressure and output? Well, if I pull the corners of my lips back, that forces my lips a little bit tighter together, which means the pressure is going to go up, output's going to go down. Pitch will go up when that happens. Okay, if I relax and drive the corners of my lips forward, the aperture with which air is escaping from my lips as I buzz is going to open and widen up because I don't have that tension there, and so output of air will increase, but the sound and the pressure is going to go down, right? So that's really important to understand that relationship between pressure and output and how they work opposite of each other. With trumpet, super high pressure on the front of the lips, low output of air. And as we move our way down, French horn still in that kind of upper brass category, a little bit more pressure. It's slightly different because of the shape of the mouthpiece. Remember, a French horn has that flute shape, that champagne flute shaped mouthpiece, as opposed to the bowl shaped mouthpiece. But still mostly higher pressure, lower output. Well, now we've swung the other way, right? Now we're going to have a greater output of air and the pressure is significantly lower on the front of the lips, which is important because our pitch is exactly an octave lower. All right, so want to get you to, let's get the baritone up here. You might be asking yourself, so what's the ratio of conical to cylindrical brass on a baritone? The baritone is approximately about 1/3 cylindrical, so about 1/3 straight tubing, and about 2/3 and 2/3 conical tubing. And a great example of this is just this last overarching bow of pipe here. You can see starts maybe 2/3 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch here, and by the time it winds up down here, it's already almost up to 1.5 inches, right? And then of course you swing around the rest of the bottom bow and into the bell, and you can see that this instrument has a lot of conical tubing in it, where it's going from a smaller width bore size to a larger width, of course, peaking here at the bell. Some baritones have some interesting, have different shapes than this one. You can see that the pistons are like a trumpet here, up and down, like this. Some baritones have a bell that faces forward. We call that a recording bell. And then they would also have valves up here in the front facing forward. So we're going to put the mouthpiece in. We're going to demonstrate the sound for you a little bit, and then we're going to get out of here for today. I've already heard a couple of requests for percussion. We might get to that tomorrow. It just kind of depends on some other factors. But here is the sound of the baritone. Some of you might recognize that from the opening phrase from the second movement of Ralph Vaughan Williams's Tuba Concerto. Is one of my favorite pieces. Speaking of the relationship between the tuba and the baritone or euphonium, the baritone is definitely mostly a band instrument. There are very few exceptions. It's not normally seen in the string orchestra or concert orchestra or symphonic orchestra, but if it was, we wouldn't actually call this a baritone euphonium. It would be called a tenor tuba, and the reason for that is that this instrument and the tuba are both very, very young instruments, about almost as young as the saxophone. It doesn't have a huge, long history. They were developed very late in the game as far as instruments go. So quite young. So whether you call this a tenor tuba or a baritone or a euphonium, which technically can have that wider bore for the deeper, darker, richer, more mellow sound, as opposed to kind of a bright, in-your-face sound like a trombone would have. It's this instrument. It is really fills that tenor voicing or kind of middle baritone bass voice in the band and in other ensembles. All right. So this has been the baritone, as we used to make light of in band, or the baritone, or euphonium, means good sound. I'll really quick show you what the size of the case is. We are getting into instruments that definitely have bigger cases, so you want to be careful as far as that. You can see, pretty big. Okay, the instrument itself is not altogether that heavy, but it is kind of bulky. Definitely want to watch out as far as packing that into your car or something the like. But that's about it. If you guys have any other comments, suggestions, or anything like that, go ahead and throw them in the comments below. And until I see you again, keep your head out of the muck. And as my friend Jonathan Fisk would say, rock on.